In the dramatic climax of the last episode, we witnessed a tense moment when Ian confronted Do-hee about her ambiguous relationship with Jun Won. Do-hee, keen to avoid delving into personal matters, swiftly redirected the conversation, suggesting they go out for a meal instead. The next day brought further tension at the office. During a crucial meeting, Jun Won extended an invitation to Do-hee, asking her to accompany him on a business trip to Busan for a prominent new brand event. Do-hee, however, found herself in a bind. Apologetically, she declined the offer, citing an overwhelming workload that she couldn't possibly neglect. Jun Won's disappointment was palpable, and before he could seek an alternative companion, another female colleague eagerly volunteered to join him. Yet, Jun Won, seemingly fixated on having Do-hee by his side, disregarded her offer and instead assigned the task to Mr. Ha. Jun Won then shifted his focus to the ongoing business dealings, probing Mr. Ha about the status of their negotiations to sign Chef Cha Yuna as part of their branding strategy. He demanded a conclusive update by week's end, emphasizing the urgency of securing a contract. After the meeting, the atmosphere remained heavy. Mr. Ha appeared particularly disheartened, which did not go unnoticed. Do-hee approached Mr. Ha with a mix of concern and urgency, having learned about the setbacks with Chef Yuna. She gently reminded him of the critical nature of the project and the expectations from upper management, stressing the importance of finalizing the agreement swiftly to avoid jeopardizing his standing within the company. Mr. Ha, visibly stressed, confessed that he had staked his career aspirations on the success of this deal, hoping it would secure him a promotion the following year. As he turned to Do-hee, seeking her assistance in salvaging the situation, their conversation was suddenly interrupted by Jun Won, who had overheard the exchange. Just as Mr. Ha began to respond, he clutched his stomach in pain and staggered, nearly collapsing onto Do-hee. Confused and concerned, Do-hee attempted to steady him, but the situation quickly escalated. Jun Won, assessing the scene with growing alarm, intervened by pulling Mr. Ha away from Do-hee, demanding to know what was happening. Amidst his agony, Mr. Ha managed to shout that he was experiencing severe stomach pain. Without hesitation, Jun Won lifted Mr. Ha onto his back and rushed him to the medical room. Later, Jun Won returned with an update for the team. The doctors had diagnosed Mr. Ha with acute appendicitis, and he would need to take a week off to recover. This unforeseen medical emergency necessitated a quick reassignment of responsibilities, and Jun Won announced that Do-hee would take Mr. Ha's place on the upcoming business trip. In the car, as they headed towards their business trip destination, Jun Won broke the silence with a probing question. He asked Do-hee if she really disliked the idea of traveling with him so much. Do-hee, masking her feelings with humor, flashed a smile and replied sarcastically that she was absolutely honored to accompany him, especially with her existing workload. Her response brought a faint grin to Jun Won's face, catching Do-hee slightly off guard. He teasingly asked why she was acting so cute all of a sudden, causing Do-hee to flinch at the unexpected compliment. She quickly retorted, half joking, asking if he was trying to distract her into an accident, given her focus on driving. Jun Won, undeterred by her deflection, expressed earnestly that he actually liked the fact that they were going on the trip together. He acknowledged that Do-hee might not have been aware of his preference for her company, subtly revealing his genuine interest in spending more time with her. Do-hee was left puzzled by Jun Won's comments, uncertain whether he was merely jesting or if there were deeper sentiments behind his words. Amidst this confusing exchange, Do-hee's phone rang, and seeing Ian's name on the display only added to her dilemma. She hesitated, wary of how Jun Won might perceive the call. Sensing her hesitation, Jun Won encouraged her to answer, assuring her that he didn't mind. In the car, as Do-hee picked up Ian's call, the atmosphere took on a distinct note of personal urgency. Ian excitedly informed Do-hee that his mother had prepared a generous portion of kimchi and other side dishes for her, a gesture of familial warmth and care. Do-hee, touched yet feeling somewhat beholden, expressed her gratitude and a slight sense of indebtedness for the continual kindness of Ian's mother. However, before she could address her current circumstances, Jun Won interjected, informing Ian that Do-hee wouldn't be able to visit that evening. Ian, recognizing Jun Won's voice, was caught off guard, but before he could inquire further, Jun Won added that they had plans to spend the night in Busan as part of their business trip. Do-hee, keen to clarify the situation and prevent any misunderstandings, quickly intervened to explain that their stay in Busan was strictly for business purposes. Nonetheless, Jun Won, perhaps mischievously or merely to clarify further, mentioned that their business trip involved an overnight stay at a hotel. This comment, unfortunately, set off alarm bells for Ian, whose concern for Do-hee morphed into protective outrage. He abruptly accused her of behaving irresponsibly, challenging the upbringing he had provided. Shocked by Ian's sudden outburst and misunderstanding, Do-hee ended the call abruptly, disturbed by his reaction. Meanwhile, back at Ian's location, his outburst had not gone unnoticed. His manager, confused by his sudden demand to fly to Busan and aware of the impending shoot, tried to reason with him. Despite Ian's insistence on leaving immediately due to what he perceived as an urgent need to protect Dohee, his manager and a studio employee physically coaxed him back to the set, emphasizing the high stakes and costs involved if he were to abandon the shoot. In the car, Dohee, feeling frustrated and cornered, confronted Jun Won about his seemingly deliberate implication that their business trip was more personal than it was. Jun Won's response was simple yet revealing. He hadn't lied about their plans, but his phrasing was indeed suggestive. Dohee accused him of intentionally misleading Ian to think wrongfully about their relationship, urging him to cease these manipulative games. She pointed out that since he wasn't interested in her romantically, such insinuations were inappropriate and made her uncomfortable. Jun Won's reply was unexpected and direct, challenging her assumption. Who said I wasn't interested? He confessed his genuine interest in her, a revelation that left Dohee speechless and pensive for the remainder of the drive. The first day of the event in Busan unfolded smoothly and was a success. Riding on the day's positive outcome, Jun Won suggested they celebrate by sampling some local seafood, a staple in Busan. However, Dohee admitted she wasn't fond of seafood, prompting Jun Won to tease her about having a childish palate, although he quickly speculated it might be inaccurate given her taste for drinks. This banter, though light-hearted, was tinged with personal undertones, leading Dohee to defensively question if her drinking habits were any of his concern. Later, at the restaurant, a moment of vulnerability occurred while Dohee was in the washroom. She had left her phone at the table, and it started to ring. Jun Won, noticing the caller ID, saw incoming messages that were abusive and threatening. When Dohee returned and checked her phone, her immediate tension and shock were evident. Jun Won, concerned, inquired about the nature of the messages. Keeping her defenses up, Dohee brushed off his concern, labeling the disturbing messages as mere spam texts, mimicking her previous dismissals of similar situations. Jun Won, not entirely convinced and remembering past instances, remarked coldly on the frequency of her so-called spam texts. Attempting to deflect the discomfort and maintain some semblance of normalcy, Dohee forced a smile and agreed, half-heartedly joking about her apparent magnetism for spam, leaving a heavy air of unresolved personal troubles lingering between them. As Dohee and Jun Won navigated their dinner conversation laden with personal undercurrents, the evening took an unexpected turn when the organizers of the event they had attended earlier walked into the restaurant. Their surprise at the coincidence brought a light-hearted moment to the evening. One organizer, noting the crowded state of the restaurant and a bit embarrassed by the situation, politely asked if they could join Dohee and Jun Won at their table. Dohee graciously welcomed them, easing the space constraints of the packed venue. The casual dinner conversation soon steered towards local attractions when one of the organizers suggested that Dohee and Jun Won visit the city's famous fireworks festival, assuming, perhaps because of their chemistry, that they were a couple. Dohee quickly corrected this assumption, emphasizing that their relationship was strictly professional. Jun Won backed her up, confirming their non-romantic status, which led the organizer to apologize for the hasty judgment, albeit complimenting them on looking great together, which had led to his mistake. Trying to shift away from any awkwardness, another organizer, wearing glasses, changed the subject. He mentioned a young lady he knew, a recent veterinary school graduate from Seoul. Highlighting her age and suggesting that she might be a suitable match for Jun Won, the organizer seemed oblivious to the tension he might be creating. Dohee, slightly irritated by the irrelevant matchmaking attempt, internally questioned the appropriateness of the age difference mentioned. Jun Won, sensing the discomfort his colleague might be feeling, tactfully declined the well-meaning but misplaced setup. He stated that he already had someone in mind who captured his attention, subtly hinting at deeper feelings possibly directed towards Dohee. His comment, paired with a faint grin, subtly shifted the dynamics, subtly affirming his interest in a more personal connection with Dohee, much to her surprise and possible confusion about his intentions. After their dinner, as Jun Won and Dohee drove towards the hotel, Dohee broached the subject lingering in her mind. She asked Jun Won about his earlier comment regarding having someone in mind, curious about the meaning behind his words. Jun Won explained that his response was a strategic way to politely decline the matchmaking attempt without causing any awkwardness or complications in the future. After a thoughtful pause, Dohee acknowledged the wisdom in his approach, agreeing that it was a tactful way to handle the situation. As they continued their drive, Dohee's gaze was caught by the brilliant display of fireworks in the night sky. The colorful bursts of light captivated her, breaking through her usual reserve. Jun Won noticed her interest and suggested they stop to watch the fireworks, noting that it was conveniently on their route to the hotel. The sight of the fireworks stirred a nostalgic and somewhat melancholic reflection in Dohee. It had been years since she experienced the simple joy of watching fireworks, a pleasure she last enjoyed as a child at an amusement park with her parents. This realization brought a bittersweet sentiment. She reminisced about the beauty she had once appreciated so effortlessly, which had since been buried under the responsibilities and routines of adult life. Jun Won, sensing a shift in Dohee's mood, gently inquired about her thoughts. Dohee shared that the moment was tinged with sadness for her. She reflected on how her life had been dominated by continuous hard work, from her school days through to her various jobs and now her commitment to her career at the company. Exhausted from a day's work, Dohee found herself grappling with a profound sense of emptiness as she returned home. The questions, why am I living my life like this? What's the purpose of working so hard, echoed in her mind. To avoid facing these existential doubts, she threw herself even more into her work, but this only served to intensify her feelings of isolation and weariness. Jun Won, sensing Dohee's growing despair, gently took her hand. He shared a perspective that living life as an endless race would only lead to misery. He reassured her that once she accepted there was no ultimate finish line, she might feel a pang of futility initially, but ultimately, this realization could free her from regrets about the past and help her find peace. At times like that, Jun Won advised, whether you want to go out and have fun or stay in and rest, you should do what makes you happy. Isn't that what makes life truly enjoyable? Encouraged by this thought, Jun Won then playfully suggested that they start having fun together, quoting the saying, "Your life begins at 30. His words were an invitation for Dohee to stop worrying about age and start living more joyfully. Caught off guard by his proposal, Dohee felt her heart race with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. As they neared their destination, she casually inquired about their accommodations, to which Jun Won replied that they had a reservation at an ordinary business hotel, but only for a twin room. This was due to a directive from Director Yu to cut costs, and since the reservation was originally for Mr. Han himself, no adjustments had been made in anticipation of the change in travel companions. Dohee, ever optimistic, suggested that the hotel might have extra rooms available, dismissing the idea of any romantic comedy-like clichés unfolding. However, fate seemed to have a different plan. Upon arrival, they learned from the hotel staff that there were no additional rooms available, all booked up because of the fireworks festival. Suddenly, Dohee found herself in a very cliché scenario she had just joked about, her initial nightmare seeming to become a reality as they faced the prospect of sharing a room. Frustrated by the unexpected predicament and eager for personal space, Dohee quickly excused herself from the hotel lobby, determined to find alternative lodging in the vicinity, which was bustling due to the festival. As she checked various motels nearby, each place repeated the same disappointing news: no vacancies due to the festival. Jun Won followed, his expression a mix of disappointment and a somewhat smug smile that didn't escape Dohee's notice. She accused him of not really being upset about the situation, interpreting his smile as satisfaction with their increasingly close quarters. Resigned to the lack of options, Dohee returned to the hotel room, bracing herself for at least the presence of 2 beds. However, upon entering, she was greeted by yet another surprise: the room had only 1 bed. Jun Won speculated aloud that there must have been some mistake either by the hotel or by Mr. Ha in the booking process. Dohee, feeling more overwhelmed, declared she would rather sleep in the car than share a bed, clearly expressing her discomfort with the situation. Jun Won, taken aback by her statement, questioned what she meant by feeling uncomfortable. He defended himself, asserting that he was far from being an imposing presence, rather, he considered himself to be on the gentle side. His comment hinted at a misunderstanding about her boundaries. As he stepped closer, trying to bridge the gap with familiarity, Jun Won touched Dohee's hair and remarked on a coincidence: their current room number was the same as the one they had shared a year ago at another hotel event. He reminisced about that night, suggesting nostalgically that they could recreate the comfort they had found in each other's company back then. This comment, however, could be seen as overstepping, especially given Dohee's clear expression of discomfort. Jun Won's gesture of kissing Dohee on the forehead was meant to be comforting, an attempt to ease the tension that had palpably built between them. He quickly tried to diffuse the awkwardness of the situation by explaining that his comments were meant as a joke to lighten the mood, recognizing how tense she appeared. After the conversation, Dohee took a shower, hoping to relax. In a strategic move to ensure personal space for the night, she decided to sleep in the middle of the bed, hoping that the lack of space would prompt Jun Won to opt for the sofa instead. However, her plan did not unfold as expected. Waking up later, she found Jun Won quietly lying beside her on the same bed. Startled and uncomfortable, she considered relocating herself to the sofa, even if it meant a less comfortable night's sleep. Before she could act on her decision, Jun Won reached out, pulling her closer. He then shared a deeper, more personal insight into his feelings. He spoke of loneliness and the sense of emptiness that can accompany a life focused solely on moving forward without pause. He admitted that he had felt a similar emptiness until meeting her, suggesting a shared understanding and experience of isolation. Jun Won's appeal to Do-hee was not just about physical proximity, it was an invitation for mutual support, to be on each other's side against the loneliness that their ambitious lives had fostered. He framed this connection as not just romantic but as a profound companionship, one that could provide solace and meaning beyond the superficial. His words struck a chord with Do-hee, her heart racing as she acknowledged his eloquence. Jun Won, sensing the moment, playfully added that he was not only good with words, suggesting more intimate possibilities. He then kissed her, deepening their encounter and perhaps marking a turning point in their relationship. In that intimate moment, it seemed as if Jun Won's presence was dissolving the layers of loneliness that Do-hee had silently harbored within herself. Yet despite the comforting warmth of his closeness, Do-hee, feeling a surge of awareness about the boundaries she wanted to maintain, gently pulled away. She reminded him, and perhaps herself, that they were not in a romantic relationship but were there for work purposes. She confessed that although she might have let her guard down the previous year, she was more conscious of her actions now and wanted to keep things professional. Jun Won, reading her discomfort and respecting her wishes, offered a compromise with a tender smile. He asked if he could simply hold her as they slept, proposing a gesture of comfort without overstepping the boundaries she had set. Do-hee, perhaps moved by his understanding and the sincerity in his request, agreed to this middle ground. With this agreement, they settled into a peaceful sleep, side by side. As Do-hee relaxed at home after returning from Busan, she found herself pondering the blurred lines between her and Jun Won. It wasn't just a few instances, they had crossed boundaries multiple times as colleagues, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss those moments as mere mistakes. However, she was hesitant to label her feelings for Jun Won, still wary of investing time and emotions into a serious relationship. Do-hee reasoned that perhaps maintaining a closeness beyond friendship but stopping short of becoming lovers was the right balance for them. It allowed for intimacy without the burden of commitment, offering a comfortable distance that suited her current mindset. Despite this rationalization, Do-hee couldn't shake off the annoyance she felt when Jun Won failed to reach out after their return from Busan. To her, it was a matter of common courtesy between colleagues, a simple acknowledgement of each other's well-being. She felt slighted by his lack of communication, even though she hadn't expected anything more. Suddenly, the doorbell interrupted her thoughts, and to her surprise, it was Ian at the door. He questioned why she hadn't been answering his calls, and Do-hee brushed it off, claiming she had been too tired to notice. However, when Ian probed further about whether something had happened between her and Jun Won in Busan, Do-hee's cheeks flushed crimson with embarrassment. She quickly composed herself, insisting that nothing had occurred, but the memory of their time together lingered in her mind, causing a mix of confusion and apprehension about what the future might hold. Taking a deep breath, Ian passionately confesses that he hasn't touched a single penny he earned from the recent advertisement shoot or the prize money from the last tournament. Everything is meticulously saved in the bank, all with one sole purpose in mind, ensuring Do-hee's future, especially her marriage and securing a place near her workplace once she ties the knot. Do-hee, taken aback by this revelation, fires back, questioning whether he sees himself as her father or boyfriend, and demands to know why he's overreacting. Undeterred, Ian stands firm, declaring with a resounding shout that he is her guardian. With a stern expression, Do-hee retorts, wondering if he's completely clueless. The next day at the office, she grapples with discomfort, anticipating her encounter with Jun Won. Despite her inner turmoil, she resolves to stay true to herself. To her surprise, Jun Won seems attuned to her mood, commenting on her apparent lack of authenticity. As she observes him, Do-hee can't help but wonder what's going on with him. He appears unfazed, acting as if nothing significant has transpired, while she berates herself for overthinking the situation. Finally, breaking the silence, Jun Won abruptly asks Do-hee if she's available for dinner that evening, claiming he has something important to discuss. At night, Do-hee receives a text from Jun Won, urgently informing her that he's caught up in a meeting and will join her directly at the restaurant, urging her to head over there first. An electric thrill courses through Do-hee for no discernible reason. Perhaps it's the anticipation of finally dining at the restaurant she's been yearning to visit for ages. Whatever the cause, she's consumed by an inexplicable wave of happiness. But in the midst of her elation, a familiar voice pierces the air, calling out to Do-hee by her name. Whirling around, she finds herself face to face with girls from her school days, especially Cha Yuna. Yuna remarks on the passing of 10 years and Do-hee's absence from reunions, making her difficult to recognize. Their school was a bastion of privilege, reserved for the offspring of elite families. Here, even minor hardships could transform into intense bullying. Do-hee, wrongly perceived as snobbish despite her struggles, bore the brunt of their cruelty. What exacerbated her suffering was a particular incident during lunchtime when Do-hee got accused by her classmates for stealing money from Yuna's bag as she didn't eat lunch that day and stayed in the classroom by herself.